This is a Hope 1032 podcast.
Hello, welcome to Undistracted. I'm your host, Laura Bennett, and this is the podcast where we learn from our guests how to be better at building our lives with intention around our passions, our purpose, and dealing with some of the stuff that can get in the way of that. Today we're talking about something that takes the attention of a lot of people, pornography. In a report shared by the Australian and New Zealand Journal of Public Health, a recent Australian study of 15 to 29-year-olds found that 100% of boys and young men and 82% of girls and young women reported ever viewing pornography. The average age for first exposure was 13 years for boys and 16 years for girls. Our guest is Californian author and mum of four, Greta Eskridge. After dealing with her husband's porn addiction, Greta wanted to have better conversations about pornography with her kids. Her book, It's Time to Talk to Your Kids About Porn, makes those conversations easier and gives us a framework for healthy sexual relationships. This conversation is an unfiltered one about what motivates the consumption of pornographic material, how it affects intimate relationships off-screen, enjoying sex without shame, and how to talk to your kids about porn without stigmatizing sex. There is reference to sexual violence and abuse, and if that's something that's affected you, you can call 1-800-RESPECT on 1-800-737-732. Let's welcome Greta to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm really, really glad to be here.
Well, I think it's important to talk about this subject of pornography and everything that comes around that, because while it might be a little bit uncomfortable for many of us, it's something that affects so many of us as well. Let's start with your own experience, I suppose, talking about conversations about sexuality, about pornography. What were those dialogues like for you as a kid growing up?
Well, I grew up in, the 80s and even early 90s as a teen, and it just really wasn't a conversation we were having. My family was just not really talking about sex hardly at all, and certainly not about pornography. I think part of that was because we didn't have to deal with it very much. Pornography was not available everywhere like it is now. You had to look for it, right? Mm-hmm. And that it just didn't really impact me. So they could say pornography is something that's bad, don't look at it. And that was all we ever had to say. But our kids, and even us, we're living in a different time now, and pornography is readily available. So we as parents have to approach it so differently than my parents did with me and my husband's parents did with him. It's just a different time.
And I think that's an important distinction, because I remember even growing up, it is something that you sought out. Whereas now, even if you're not looking for it, it comes to you. You don't even have to be on certain channels or certain platforms to find it. You almost have to put things in place so that you don't see it if you don't want to. We've got to be much more proactive, I suppose.
Yeah, I was just talking about this today with a person. We were talking about how on Instagram, I get messages in I guess they're the hidden messages on Instagram. And I look on those because I often have they're legitimate messages from people. But there are also these messages that are from spam accounts and other accounts that are nefarious, I guess. And they are graphic. It'll just be one line, but it'll have emojis or a sentence. And they are an invitation to look at pornography, basically. And I'm not searching those out, but that pornography industry is coming after me. It's out there looking for customers, really.
Yeah, and I suppose as a parent yourself, given like so many others, you were raised in an environment where these sorts of things weren't really spoken about. How has that affected the way that you raise your kids?
Well, I would say that there's two answers to that question. One, recognizing, as my kids are now 20 down to 13. By the time my oldest was 10, I had a real awareness. Okay, things are different. We've got to figure out how to help our kids navigate this. But I think I was more sensitive because pornography had impacted my husband and I in our marriage. My husband had confessed to a pornography addiction. So we were really aware that pornography could have devastating results for anybody who used it, as was the case for my husband. Well, he, sought recovery, and really then both of us were like, we are going to do something different for our kids. We want to give them more tools to recognize the damage of pornography, to know the truth about it, and to turn the other way. So I think the combination of experiencing the negativity of pornography in our own life and then recognizing we're raising our kids in this time period, this digital age where they're going to be impacted by pornography, both of those things really lit a fire in us to want to help our kids.
Yeah, and I do want to talk about the experience you had with your husband. But before we get to that, I think it's important to just take a couple steps back here, because we are making this inherent assumption that pornography is bad in some way, that you shouldn't be looking at it, that it can be damaging. Why is that your perspective? Because not everybody holds that view. A lot of people see it as a form of sexual expression, of sexual exploration, and perhaps really liberating in some ways. So why do you come from the view that it is a negative, damaging thing?
Well, I think it's really important to recognize the way pornography impacts your view of other people. If you are consuming pornography, what is happening is you are objectifying the person who is on the screen. And objectification means you're turning that person into an object, not a real person with brains and creativity and a sense of humor and all the things that make human beings so incredible. Instead, that person becomes an object, something for you to use and then discard when you're done. And the argument might be, well, that's a person on a screen, like it's not real. But what begins to happen with continual use of pornography is it's not just the person on the screen that you begin to see as objects, but it's other people you come in contact with. That could be your spouse, your family, friends, even strangers. It changes the way you view other people. Pornography also has a negative impact on you yourself. It can create feelings of shame, depression, anxiety, even self-hatred as you are comparing yourself to what you see on the screen, as you feel stress and anxiety over the content that you're consuming. Pornography is violent in nature almost all the time now. So the people who are creating it are creating content that is violent. You don't always know that the person who is creating the pornography is consenting to that. So you're running then into this world of sextortion, sex trafficking, child sex abuse material is being created through pornography. There are a lot of negatives, and that is why, for me, I can't say pornography is healthy or harmless, because I have done the research, and the research shows it's connected to so many different negative things.
And even in bringing up consent, it is in Australia, and I presume in America, there's a similar discussion happening where consent is being spoken about so much more in really great ways, making sure that we understand what true consent looks like, that you can change your yes to a no at any point if you want to. But then in the context of pornography, there's this sense that consent makes anything okay. So if two people consent to something, that's all you need for it to be appropriate. Is that true from your view? If consent is there, if somebody's happy to have a violent experience and both people agree to it, should we say that's acceptable because they're consenting?
Wow, this is a really powerful and important point. I think we have to consider something even bigger than the two people on the screen creating the pornography, both consenting. Because what about the people who are consuming it? So, for example, there is a growing number of women being choked during sex. And it is because directly related to what they're seeing happening in pornography, in violent porn. The women are being choked on the screen. And so that's what's happening with people who are engaging in sexual acts themselves. So I would say, even if the people on the screen are consenting to this kind of behavior, what is the outcome of what they're doing to all the people who are watching it? It's not good. It's not safe. And I can't condone it. I just can't. Even if they're consenting, I think we have a responsibility as consumers to say that is not good for the people who are consuming that porn. It's just not good.
It's certainly shifting the way that people are treated off screen, because if people are listening wondering, is this real? Is this theoretical about how it changes behavior? I've had conversations and experiences even recently with some of my female friends where you're meeting a guy for the first time, whether it's at a bar, on the dance floor, whatever the context may be, and their first experience with that new person, that first kiss, you decide you want to kiss this person, there is so often choking involved. Just last week, chatting with a friend of mine who's like, why have guys changed the way they treat women who you're meeting for the first time, but they grab you in a very aggressive manner? There's not the same sensitivity or kindness that you would expect, particularly when this is a stranger that you've just met on a night out.
Yeah, and that has direct correlation to what they're seeing on screens through porn. Because if it's normalized. It's like, if that's what you're seeing happening, that's what you think you're supposed to do, and that's what you think the girl is supposed to want. Nobody is telling you different. If that's your education, then you think, okay, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. That's what girls like. And that proves I'm a man or whatever. And it has an impact. What we consume, whether it's the food we eat or the things that we watch, it has an impact on us and the way we act. And it has an impact on our health, our physical health, in the case of food, our mental and emotional health in the case of the things that we're watching.
And it also brings up this question of, why don't I like things I'm quote unquote supposed to like, right? Like if a girl, for instance, doesn't like being choked, or if a guy is watching something thinking, I'm supposed to be open to this, I'm supposed to want to experiment here, but something about it feels uncomfortable. I think there's something in that as well, where we start to question our own, or we start to question whether what we believe about sexuality is normal, what we believe about sexual expression is acceptable, or if something's wrong with us because we don't express it in the ways normalized in pornography.
Yeah, that is also true. And I think then what happens is we are not allowed, or we're not left to the opportunity of coming into that on our own with our safe, trusted partner. Instead, just by whoever, wrote the script for that porn episode that we're seeing, they're the ones who are writing the story for us, instead of the opportunity to do it, like I said, in a safe place with a trusted partner. Those are two totally different scenarios. And I think one is obviously better than the other. I can't help but think that.
Coming to what happened between you and your husband, how did you realize something was up, that there was a porn addiction at play?
I actually did not know at all. Again, this goes back to, how I was raised, having almost no knowledge of pornography, and really not even understanding a world of pornography addiction, and certainly not understanding it in the context of somebody like my husband. We'd been married for 10 years, at least, maybe longer. I got to do some math. But, he was a good dad. He was a good husband. He held a stable job. We went to church. Like, in my mind, he never would have fit who I thought was a person that would use pornography. So when he confessed to me, then things made sense, but I didn't connect the dots myself ahead of time. And that was largely due to my own lack of knowledge. And from that, I decided I need to learn so much more. One, to help him on his own journey of recovery. Two, to help myself on my journey of recovery, because as a betrayed partner, that was something that needed to be addressed too. But then also to help our kids, because I thought, wow, what if my daughter was ever in this situation? I would want her to know ahead of time. I would want her to be able to look at the clues and say, oh, something is going on that I need to address. Or for my sons, if their partner was engaging in pornography, I would want them to know. Or for them themselves, I just felt like we all needed to learn a lot more to be better equipped to deal with this potential problem, and also to hopefully avoid it altogether.
How do you even begin to have a conversation with your kids about pornography? Because I feel like depending on the parent, you may feel so uncomfortable even talking about sex yourself, let alone something that is related to the way your kids, your teenagers are starting to learn about sex themselves.
Well, I think the conversation for younger kids and teens are going to be a little different, but they're also going to have a lot of overlap. And so I would start with the younger kids. I really think that ideally you are talking to your kids about pornography when they're 6, 7, 8 years old, because you want to address it with them before first exposure. And most times, first exposure is going to happen somewhere between the ages of 9 and 12.
Wow.
So if you could talk to them before that and give them tools to be able to not be overwhelmed or terrified or ashamed of what they've seen, and then to come talk to you about it, you have given them such an incredible opportunity to move past that without it becoming something that is shameful or scary, or that they go back to with no help and no information. So for those little kids, I would say your conversation is like not even 2 minutes. And you say something like, sweetheart, I need to tell you something about this thing called pornography. Pornography is pictures or movies of people who have no clothes on. You can see their private parts, and we need to make sure we don't show other people our private parts. We don't look at other people's. So if you ever see something like that on a screen, someone shows it to you on their screen, maybe you're playing a game, looking at mommy's phone. If you ever see something like that, you can just turn the phone over, turn off the tablet, tell the person who showed it to you, I don't want to look at that. And then just come to me or to dad or some other grown-up that you trust and say, I think I saw pornography. Can you help me? And we'll help you. You won't be in trouble. We are there to help you. Pornography is not a safe thing for you to see, and it's our job to keep you safe. So that conversation is so short and it's so impactful, but you haven't given them details. You're not telling them all kinds of information that they do not need to know, just that it's not good for them and what it is, and then what to do when they see it.
I think there'd be some parents that would be quite hesitant to bring something like that up so young. You know, a 6-year-old having this conversation, aren't you at risk of introducing them to something that they just don't need to know about yet?
That is probably the number one question parents ask me. So you are right on target with that. And I think that I understand that hesitation 100%. I mean, I remember having those conversations with my kids when they were young, and I felt the same way. But I will say that, again, our goal is to talk to them before that exposure. So that means you are going to have to talk to them at a young age. And by saying nothing, the greater risk of them seeing something and being underprepared is that's a greater risk than you saying something and they might become curious. And you can even address their curiosity ahead of time. Say, if you're curious about what I'm telling you, if you want to talk more, if you have questions, let me know. I want to talk to you. I mean, I think about it as a safety element in raising our kids, just like we would tell them, don't touch a hot stove, you'll get burned. Don't cross the street without me. I'm here to keep you safe. When we go to an amusement park, stay with me. I don't want you to get lost. Those are all safety tips we give our kids. This is just another safety tip for growing up in a digital age.
What if the ship has already sailed, and whether it's a young child or a teenager, if they've already been exposed to pornography, perhaps there's already some level of addiction, how does the conversation with them vary to a child that hasn't seen anything yet?
Well, if you have a kid who has confessed to you that they've seen something, then I would say that's the easiest scenario, because you can come to them with love and care, comfort them, and then help them, move past that. If they haven't confessed and you've discovered, or maybe when you're bringing it up as, that first conversation, and you can tell by their body language or, their hesitancy to answer any questions, you can tell like something is amiss. those are the opportunities for you to still step in and say, I'm so sorry for what you've seen. You might be feeling scared or ashamed, or maybe you have questions. I want you to know I care about you. I'm on your team. I'm here to help. So your response is still the same, but you are handling it in a way that addresses the feelings that they might have for what they've seen. And you're going to be then moving on to trying to determine what exactly they have been exposed to, so you can get the level of help that they need. Because if they've been exposed to just one time accidentally seeing something pornographic, you can handle that on your own. But if they have been consuming a lot of pornography, they've seen violent porn, you might need to get them some help from a counselor, somebody who has some more expertise than you. So that initial response is the same no matter what. I'm so sorry for what you've seen. I'm here to help you. But then you're going to gauge how much help they need based on what they've been exposed to.
You don't want to be adding to the shame of the experience, though, too, I suppose, because to some degree, potentially, people are enjoying what they're watching, right? People would not watch porn if there wasn't some kind of satisfaction or pleasure derived from it. So in terms of that side of the equation, where you've got people finding pleasure in watching sexual activities, they're being sexually stimulated by watching that sort of stuff, what do you do with the desire and the pleasure side that can have healthy expressions when that's being found in porn? How do you celebrate the healthy side of sexual expression, desire, pleasure, without, totally shaming the fact that they've found it in a place that you wouldn't consider to be healthy?
Well, I think there's a few different approaches. My approach, I am a person of faith, and so that will come into play in my view. And so I would say that the response to sexual things is God-given. We were created to have a sexual response, to be sexually attracted, to actually have sex. Like, we're designed for it. And sex is not bad. It is good. It is a gift. So I would make sure that that is absolutely established from the time my kids are young, that they know there is nothing bad with their body parts. Every body part is designed for a purpose. It's good. No bad parts. The act of sex is not bad. However, if it's done in a way where someone is being hurt, where that could be the person on the screen or the person consuming it, where there could be physical impacts from consuming pornography, which there are, or emotional impacts, like the fact that pornography is addictive, that dopamine hit you get from watching porn. Because there's a dopamine hit, there is the pleasure aspect that happens with sexual activity. But the problem is pornography hijacks it and makes it so that you need more and more of that dopamine hit. And it is not enough. It's not satiated the way it is with a real sexual encounter. So I would say for kids, by the time they're teenagers, those are conversations that you should have so they understand that there is a difference between traditional sexual activity between two people, two partners, two humans, than sex with a person on a screen. Those are very different. And the way it impacts your brain and your body and your whole psyche, they're very different. And they need to understand the difference, because I would say, as a parent, I would tell my kid, one is better for you than the other.
And people are going to come to their own conclusions about that,
yes,
of course, with their own perspectives, right? But one thing I've observed in the way that sex is spoken about now, and even the way that pornography is normalized, is that there isn't really an acknowledgement of how people can turn to sex, even with people, not in real life, not just on a screen, but how people can turn to sex, how people can turn to things like masturbation for a kind of almost self-medication, that it's not so much about, I just enjoy this as entertainment, but it's actually something that is covering up some kind of underlying issue. Can you speak to that when these things are used to remedy a kind of internal challenge and not just for the pleasure of the experience?
Yes, that's fantastic. I'm so glad you brought it up, because I think that is a part of the story that is often missing when we talk about pornography addiction, for example. a lot of times psychologists or researchers will say pornography is addiction is often really an intimacy disorder because there is this longing for connection. There is a loneliness. There is a trying to fill a void that is a wound, maybe from childhood, maybe from adulthood, but there is something that we're trying to fill by using pornography, especially when it becomes addictive. And that could be you could say the same thing, like if your addiction is shopping, if your addiction is food, alcohol, gambling, whatever. So often we're seeking that quick high to hide some sort of pain we're dealing with, a wound, or to numb the thing that we don't want to come face to face with. And my husband works with a lot of men who are dealing with porn addiction and sex addiction. And for many of them, there was some wounding that happened in their childhood, their teenage years, and adulthood that they are not coming face to face with or haven't wanted to. And this is how they're self-medicating. And we have to consider that as part of the story so that we can respond to that with compassion and care, not like judgment and coming down, but say, wow, how can we get to the root of your problem so you can deal with it in a healthy way?
It's interesting the way you sort of frame that and speak to what's happening for people, because even in conversations I've had recently, I feel like there's a few people, men especially, who feel like the way that porn has been spoken about, the way that sexual experiences have been spoken about, there was this promise that they would somehow fulfill unmet desires, that they would bring solution to some of those, those feelings of loneliness. And now they're dealing with the fact that hasn't helped in the way that they thought, that the absence of some kind of love in sexual experience, the absence of some kind of, committed relationship has actually been really traumatic, that they're now in this place where they're saying, porn hasn't delivered on all its promises. I don't know what to do with the fact that it hasn't given me what I thought it would. If somebody's in that situation where they've kind of almost been like let down and they don't know where to go with the feeling of loneliness that porn still has left them with, I mean, where do you take that? When porn doesn't remedy what you think that it would, what do you do?
Well, I think that's when talking to someone, a real life person, is really where you're going to find that help, because what you've identified is that you're longing for connection. Like you're longing for love, you're longing for connection, you're longing for intimacy. You want relationship. That's really what we all crave as humans. We want to be in relationship with people. We want to be loved. We want to be known. And I think that there is a message in culture that tells us sex is the answer to that. Like if you have sex with someone, you're going to have that connection. You're going to feel like you belong. You're going to feel loved. And that is not the truth. It's much bigger than that, right? Because you could have sex with anybody. You could have sex with a stranger, and that's not going to give you that connection and intimacy you're longing for. And so to have first, like the clarity of mind, the bravery to recognize that that's what you're longing for, and that pornography or sleeping around, hooking up isn't meeting those deep needs in your heart and your soul. And then to pursue those things with real life people. That's why we need to, I just say we need to get off of screens and really connect with people, however that can be, meeting real people and hanging out for coffee, even joining a gym instead of doing classes at your house. So you're meeting people, you're talking to people. Like that's what we need to do. You could talk to a therapist, but then just to pursue real relationships with people, that's what we're longing for.
Yeah, and seeing how people are face-to-face versus the way that you see people treated online. I mean, it's a really big distinction, and I appreciate in the way you've spoken about this today, and of course in your book as well, that it's about hope, that it's about finding pathways forward. It's about enabling people to find healthy sexual relationships, healthy intimacy. I want to ask you as we wrap it up, on that perspective, to begin relationships healthy, to set things up in that kind of way, where would you begin? If porn is not the answer, if it's a really unhealthy thing, how do we set our kids up for healthy sexual relationships?
Well, it really starts in the family and then with their friends. So you don't wait to show them what real connection and real relationship looks like till they have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. You start that from the time they're young with the way you spend time together as a family, doing real life things together, playing games, eating dinner together as, every night if you can, reading books together, like spending intentional time together, face to face, doing things. And then you bring in their friends as they grow up, like inviting friends to come over for dinner, sitting around a campfire outside, in your backyard and hanging out there and telling stories instead of everybody just being on their phone. Build as many opportunities for real life relationships to grow and real life connections to happen. That's how you begin to show them what that looks like so that they want more of it. Because like I said, that's what we all want. We all want to be connected to one another.
Yeah, bringing change through example, I think, is a really special thing. Greta, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for your book as well. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Undistracted. If sexual violence abuse has affected you in any way, you can call 1-800-RESPECT on 1-800-737-732. And Greta's book is called It's Time to Talk to Your Kids About Porn. And hopefully it really does inspire some great conversations between you and your kids, if that's the case, or perhaps just all of us who come across this content and these conversations in other parts of life. Until next time, enjoy living this undistracted life.